don't.
In the free, as far as I'm aware, at least.
Yes, correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, good morning, everyone. I put on the record. It's Friday the 24th. I'm just going to pop everyone on mute for the moment. And if you want to speak, just either raise your hand, put it in the chat bar, or come through to questions. So there's a couple of things I want to update you on this morning. So on last week, I gave you a community services update. Apologies, we haven't got that paper out to you formally. I'm still waiting for the final version of that from CLCH. So we are either hoping to have that by the end of the day or Monday morning, and then I'll share it. You'll either get it in today's bulletin if it's ready in time, or I'll share it with you on Tuesday morning as a final version. Nothing significantly has changed from my webinar earlier in the week. Really adding waiting times to that table before we can share it, and you can always reflect back on my webinar from Tuesday if you wanted to see the details. This morning, what I wanted to cover was direct access imaging, and there are some things that are happening here. So unfortunately, there are, as you probably know, a significant backlog in diagnostics at the Royal Free. So this is Royal Free, Barnet and Chase Farm. Approximately 3,500 scans are backlogged across NCL. Now, on average, that can be between 10 and 30 scans per practice, with an average of 17 per practice across NCL. Depending on your practice size, there'll be smaller and larger numbers. What is being looked at by the trust is actually how do they prioritise the work. Now, some of the scans say ultrasound abdomen, abdo pain, query cause, and they've sent the scan through. Now it's difficult now because it's often 4 months. Does this patient still need the scan? Or it was, urgent, severe abdo pain, query cause, and of course 4 months have passed. Do they still need the scan? It's very difficult for them to prioritise the work. So NCL have discussed this in their diagnostic work stream, and I think on Monday we'll be sending a letter out to practices to ask them to look at a handful of scans where they've requested imaging for, where the clinical details are really unclear. So they will be asking you to just have a look at a handful of scans to see whether you think these patients still need the scan, and whether you could update the clinical details. So this has come from NCO, and I think this is coming on Monday to practices, as far as I'm aware. There is some new guidance also coming out next week on what NCL have asked us to do in terms of RAG rating scans. And I'm just going to give you a heads up on what that document is going to say. So it's going to be saying that from next week, when you start to order things like ultrasounds or any other type of scan, that you RAG rate them from red, amber and green. So red scans generally are ones where you might be thinking about doing a 2-week wait after the scan. So it'll be a red. Generally, that wouldn't be an ultrasound scan because we don't really tend to do ultrasounds for 2-week waits, but it's something to be aware of. Amber, which is a medium priority, is, well, we're not suspecting cancer, but but actually we're saying the condition may cause harm, and we're hoping that imaging would take place as soon as possible, preferably within 6 weeks. And so things like that could be your abdominal pain. And then your green would be your routine or low priority, where your condition is unlikely to cause significant harm and can wait for assessment, which could really in this world take 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the worst case scenario. And an example that comes to mind about that for me is somebody that you're following up for, I don't know, let's say a fibroid or a cyst on an ultrasound pelvis, something like that. Or you're looking again for fatty liver or something like that, where they can easily wait a few months. So they will be asking us to RAG rate scans. And now there's a very brief definition, but it's really up to clinical judgment to make that RAG rating. And what will happen then is once we've RAG rated it, when it hits the trust, they'll do the reds, the ambers and the greens in time order and according to RAG rating. So I think that's somewhat helpful. So there's some guidance coming out about that next week. The next thing I wanted to just highlight to you this morning was again about phlebotomy. We talked about that last week, and I gave you the announcement that Edgware was going to restart, and unfortunately that has been delayed, and so apologies that I'm giving you that news. And they're actually not due to restart now until the 3rd of August, although we have been pushing for them to restart early or middle of next week, and I'm still waiting to hear, but they've said that they'll definitely be restarting Edgware on the 3rd of August. and if not possible, the earlier in the week. So we're thinking maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'll keep you posted as soon as I hear more details. The capacity at Finchley Memorial is now pre-COVID, and it's back to full capacity as it is in the Royal Free Hospital and Chase Farm Hospital. And as colleagues will know, Barnet Hospital is not doing any phlebotomy because they are what we call a COVID site. So they will not be, it's not safe for them to do any phlebotomy there from primary care, but they're of course doing in-house, so secondary care phlebotomy for patients that are in hospital. And the next thing I wanted to let you know about this morning was about flu jabs. So as you probably heard in this morning's announcement, the rumours that were sort of parked by NHS England have now come to fruition from our government to suggest that we should be offering flu jabs to younger adults, so potentially the age of 50, 55. So we're waiting for the formal announcement to come probably later today, Monday or Tuesday. But certainly those that have been shielding and are in the high risk group of COVID, although I suspect anyone that was in the high risk and was shielding is probably eligible for flu jab anyway. So the significant age change will be an issue. Now, I thought this morning, actually, what does that mean for us as practices, and do we have enough flu jabs? And certainly reflecting my own practice, we actually tried to order flu jabs last week, some more, and we were told that you can't do it. So certainly I know that could be an issue for colleagues on this call. So I flagged this with the CCG, and we will be contacting the right people to try and support practices during this time. But I was going to bring this up anyway today, and the reason I was going to bring it up was to highlight colleagues to think about their flu plans. And the RCGP has released a document for primary care. So if you just look it up, and I can share the link as well, about what we should be doing. And it's recommending different models for primary care and how we might do flu jabs, and whether we do that through practices or PCNs, and how we work it out. Now, of course, we're all independent contractors and businesses, so of course we want to probably jab as many people as we can, because it impacts us financially the less people we jab. So thinking about protecting primary care, I think we need to start thinking about and having conversations with neighbouring practices and PCNs about how we might safely deliver flus. Really, the models are suggesting from the RCGP, as we were correctly saying, we should be thinking about doing flu clinics outside. And that is because the risk of transmission of COVID remains very high in an environment indoors, especially as we now have evidence that microdroplets can stay in the air for 4 to 6 hours. And so if you're having large numbers of people coming through this practices, or any indoor environment, even like school halls and things, it's still a slightly higher risk than it would be doing flu jabs outside. So certainly something to think about. You might even decide to do drive-through models. There's quite a few things on the RCGP, and there's lots of resources out there. But I think really this is the chance for us to be working together as a neighbourhood, as a borough, to say actually what can we do to support one another, so that we can really achieve it. And if we're looking at numbers, we probably should also be thinking about, if we are including the 50 age group, what numbers does that mean? What does that mean in practical terms for us? And the RCGP has also released some ideas to us to say, if you had 4 people jabbing at one go, how many could you do in an hour? How many jabs can you safely administer in an hour? And there's some guidance to that to try and work out models. There's some really useful things there. But certainly thinking about that. So I'm going to pause there. I've not given you a huge update today. The final thing, so I did want to give you one more clinical update. I had a couple of questions from last week about the clusters. And one of the questions I had this week was about, we're having a lot of people who still have loss of smell after COVID. What do we do? So I went to some ENT experts this week, and they said, well, if you think about if you had a sinus infection, and you can often lose the sense of smell. And actually, I can reflect back that I had that once a few years back. What did I do? And I bought some nasal spray, and if that doesn't work, we'd use nasal drops. Now, steroid nasal drops. So if you've got somebody that's had loss of smell for more than 4 weeks and it's bothersome, there are 2 things that ENT is suggesting. One is to retrain the sense of smell. And the way we would recommend patients do that is exposing themselves to strong smells, things like mint and all those kind of very strong smells over a period of time, to see if that triggers the sense of smell to come back. And there's some guidance online about smell training effectively, how to do it on the Royal College of ENT website. The second thing is a short course of 2 weeks of corticosteroid nasal spray, something like Flixonase or Flixonase nasal drops, that you'd advise patients to use twice a day for 2 weeks. So I'll pause there for questions. Martin, you've got your hand up. Martin, you're on mute.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Well, how about taste? I had somebody with loss of taste, and they said the repeat testing was negative. Of course, that could well be COVID. What on basis of what you've just said about smell, what would you say about taste?
So just to be sure, because sometimes the loss of taste is linked to the loss of smell because it's part of the same thing. If it's separate, I don't know the answer to that, and I'll try and find out.
It was separate. I had to go away and think about it. Yeah, thank you.
I will try and come back to you. And then Charlotte's just, so Leora's put down that Elliot Benjamin uses Dymista. If you use all the other stuff, absolutely, we're using that as well quite a lot. Calvin's put a comment down. There is an urgent option under the radiology tab on TQuest. Yep, you're absolutely right. Whether we could have a RAG rating option on TQuest. So I'll bring that up with the trust and see if there's a way of doing that. That's a really good point as well. Are there any other questions this morning? Anyone want to ask me anything? Okay, so if you do think of anything, just let me know on the chat bar and I'll get back to you on Tuesday's webinar. Otherwise, have a fantastic Friday and weekend, and I'll see everyone on Tuesday.
Thanks, Nick.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank
Bye.
you.